I wanted to be a doctor since I was 5 years old. Not because of cartoons or toys, but because my neighbor Mrs. Green collapsed in her driveway and I didn't know what to do. I watched the paramedics arrive and work on her with such calm focus, such urgency, such care. That night, I asked my mom how to become someone like them. She said, "You have to go to school for a long time, baby." And I said, "Okay." I meant it. Every night after that, I started pretending my teddy bear had a fever or a broken leg or chest pain. I'd wrap him up in scarves and socks, scribble pretend notes on sticky pads, and tell my parents he'd be fine with 2 spoonfuls of apple juice. My dream was simple, pure, and burning. But dreams in my house didn't always matter. Not when my father walked in. He was tall, commanding, and carried the past on his shoulders like a championship banner he never got to hang. My father was supposed to be a basketball star. He was recruited by a few colleges, even had a scout once compare him to Scottie Pippen. But he tore his ACL his junior year. No scholarships. No pro dreams. No more basketball after high school. He carried that pain around like a phantom limb. He brought it into everything, his job, his voice, and especially into me. When I turned 6, I got my first real basketball. I was confused. I had asked for a doctor kit. He said, "This is better." I smiled and thanked him because I didn't want to seem ungrateful. But that was the first seed of silence I planted. It wouldn't be the last. From that moment on, basketball was our language. He took me to the courts every Saturday morning. He made me run drills in the driveway until sunset. He bought cones, ladders, ankle weights. He told me I had the legs he never had. He said I had the vision. He said, "I'm not gonna let what happened to me happen to you." It was meant to be love. But it felt like chains. When I tried to talk about science class or the frog we dissected, he tuned out. When I brought home a future surgeon drawing from 2nd grade, he didn't put it on the fridge. He said, "That's cute. Now come shoot free throws." By age 10, I was in a private league. By 11, we were traveling across the state. By 12, he had created a highlight reel of me on YouTube. Everyone said I was gifted. But I didn't feel gifted. I felt trapped. I never had a sleepover. Never joined science club. Never learned how to play the flute like I wanted. Every day after school was practice. Weekends were tournaments. Win or lose, the car rides home were lectures. Not about my happiness. But about footwork, hustle, positioning. At 13, I sprained my wrist. I was relieved. I thought I'd get a break. But he taught me how to shoot left-handed. At 14, I was recruited by a local prep school. My mom smiled nervously. My dad cried like he won the lottery. He framed the acceptance letter. He bought a new pair of Jordans to celebrate my future. No one asked what I wanted. No one noticed that I cried into my pillow that night. At 15, I got straight A's in biology. I left the report card on the kitchen table. My mom hugged me. My dad said, "Nice. Now get ready for practice." At 16, I started secretly volunteering at a retirement home. I told them I was doing extra study hall. In truth, I just wanted to be around people I could help. I learned how to take blood pressure. I learned how to listen. I felt alive in scrubs and gloves, not sneakers and jerseys. At 17, I took the SATs. I didn't tell my dad. I applied to pre-med programs across the country. Still, I played ball. Still, I smiled for photos. Still, I let him dream through me. But every dunk I made, I felt emptier. By 18, I had a full ride offer from a top basketball school. He nearly fainted from joy. He told everyone. Family. Friends. Even old coaches from his past. He called me his legacy. And I felt like a lie. The night before graduation, I got my acceptance letter to a top pre-med school. I stared at it for hours. I felt joy and dread. I didn't sleep. I couldn't decide. Then I made a deal with myself. I'd go to the basketball school, but take science electives. Keep the dream alive in secret. Balance both worlds. Try to live for him and for me. The first year was exhausting. 6A. Weight training. Midday chemistry lectures. Evening practices. Night labs. No social life. No rest. Just tunnel vision and guilt. I aced every science class. I led our team in assists. My father was proud. But I was breaking inside. I cried in the shower so no one would hear. I whispered apologies to myself in the mirror. I started writing letters to my future patients. They helped me stay grounded. They reminded me of who I was. At 20, I registered for the MCAT. I didn't tell anyone. I studied in janitor closets. Under bleachers. On the bus between games. I took the exam 3 states away during a tournament weekend. I barely made it to the second half of our game. Coach yelled. I benched. My dad was furious. But I had passed. I had scored high. I was closer than ever. Still, I stayed quiet. Until the night I collapsed. During a game. From exhaustion. I woke up in the hospital. For in my arm. My mom crying. My dad pacing. The doctor said it was stress-induced dehydration and burnout. He asked about my schedule. I broke down. Everything came out. The pre-med courses. The volunteering. The MCAT. The double life. My dad didn't speak to me for days. When he did, it wasn't what I expected. He said, "Why didn't you just tell me?" And I said, "Would you have let me?" He looked at the floor for a long time. Then he left. I thought that was the end. But 2 weeks later, he showed up at my dorm. With a white coat and a gift box. It said Dr. Brooks on it. He didn't say much. Just hugged me. And whispered, "Go save lives." That was the moment I knew I could finally breathe. That love doesn't always look like understanding, but it can grow. And that even broken dreams can build bridges.
Every morning I sit behind the wheel and take a deep breath before turning the key. I tell myself it's just another day, just another ride, just another city full of strangers. But deep inside I know it's more than that. Every ride is a reminder that I am not where I wanted to be. Sometimes I drive past the stadium, the big one with lights that shine even in the afternoon, and I wonder what my life would have looked like had I just made it through that first tryout. Would I be wearing a jersey with my name on it? Would kids ask for my autograph? Would my parents be proud? Would I be proud? I try not to dwell on it too much, but memory has a funny way of creeping in when you least expect it. One day, I picked up a kid wearing a messy jersey. He was about 10. Maybe younger. He climbed in with his mother holding a ball tight in his arms. He talked nonstop about his team, how he was the fastest in his group, and how one day had play in Spain. His eyes were full of fire, the kind I once had. His mother smiled, but her voice was tired. I could tell she'd had a long day. When they got out, I wished him good luck. He said, "Thank you, sir. One day you'll see me on TV." And just like that, he was gone. But that sentence stayed with me. I kept thinking about that kid, about how someone once told me the same thing, how someone believed in me, and how that belief was buried under years of disappointment. That night, I couldn't sleep, so I drove to the old field, the one I hadn't seen in years. It was smaller than I remembered. The grass had grown uneven, but the rocks we used as goals were still there. I stood in the middle of the field and closed my eyes, and for a moment I was 10 again, barefoot, laughing, alive. The wind picked up, and I swear I could hear echoes of old cheers. That moment made me realize something. I may have lost my chance, but I hadn't lost my love for the game. The next day I asked around and found a local youth center looking for volunteers. They needed someone to help coach their under-12 Team I signed up without hesitation. The kids were wild and loud and sometimes impossible, but they listened when I spoke about the game. They looked at me like I knew something, and maybe I did. I taught them everything I knew: how to pass with purpose, how to shoot with control, how to play not just with their feet, but with their hearts. One boy reminded me of myself. His name was Kareem, fast, determined, always the last to leave the field. I saw his shoes once torn at the soles, held together with tape. But he never complained. He ran like the world depended on it. One day after practice, he came up to me and said, "Coach, why do you care so much? No one else does." I looked at him and said, "Because I used to be you." He didn't understand, but he smiled anyway. That smile meant everything.
Then he said, "At first, yeah. But only because I thought you were walking away from me." I told him I was walking toward myself. He smiled. He said, "I see that now." We sat on a bench in silence. It was the kind of silence that heals. Later that night, I showed him my white coat. He ran his hand over the embroidered name. He said, "It looks good on you." And for the first time in years, I believed it. Classes got harder. I faced cadavers. Blood. Tears. Failures. But I also saw life. Recovery. Hope. I delivered my first baby during my OB rotation. I cried with the mother. I held that tiny life and thought, this is it. This is what I'm meant to do. Not just study the body, but honor it. Protect it. Fight for it. I joined a mentorship program. Young girls interested in science and medicine would come shadow us. One of them reminded me of myself. Quiet. Curious. A little scared. I told her, "You don't have to be loud to be powerful." She wrote that down in her notebook. It hit me hard. Because I realized I'd spent so many years being quiet. Trying not to disturb anyone. Trying not to let anyone down. Now, I was teaching others to speak up. To take space. To chase what mattered. There were moments I still missed: the sound of sneakers on a court. The rhythm of a game. The rush of a win. But those moments faded quickly. Because the joy I felt now was deeper. More lasting. Every diagnosis I made. Every patient I helped. Every person who walked away feeling heard, it mattered. I began writing a blog. About my journey. The intersection of sports and medicine. The pressure of parental dreams. The importance of letting kids choose. It went viral. Messages poured in. From former athletes. From students. From parents. One mother wrote, "I almost forced my son into law school. Now I'm letting him explore." I cried reading that. Another man said, "I was that father. Thank you for showing me it's not too late to support my daughter's dreams." That's when I realized my story wasn't just mine. It was a mirror. A message. A bridge. I didn't resent my father anymore. He was a product of his time, his hurt, his hope. He did the best he could with the dream he lost. But now, I had a dream of my own. And I was living it. Not just for me. But for every kid who ever felt unheard. For every student told their passion didn't matter. For every young girl who chose a scalpel over a sneaker. And especially for the little me, who once thought she had to choose between love and purpose. Because now, I know you don't have to choose. You can have both. If you fight for it. If you believe in it. If you're willing to walk the long, quiet road that leads back to yourself. Then he said, "At first, yeah. But only because I thought you were walking away from me." I told him I was walking toward myself. He smiled. He said, "I see that now." We sat on a bench in silence. It was the kind of silence that heals. Later that night, I showed him my white coat. He ran his hand over the embroidered name. He said, "It looks good on you." And for the first time in years, I believed it. Classes got harder. I faced cadavers. Blood. Tears. Failures. But I also saw life. Recovery. Hope. I delivered my first baby during my OB rotation. I cried with the mother. I held that tiny life and thought, this is it. This is what I'm meant to do. Not just study the body, but honor it. Protect it. Fight for it. I joined a mentorship program. Young girls interested in science and medicine would come shadow us. One of them reminded me of myself. Quiet. Curious. A little scared. I told her, you don't have to be loud to be powerful. She wrote that down in her notebook. It hit me hard. Because I realized I'd spent so many years being quiet. Trying not to disturb anyone. Trying not to let anyone down. Now, I was teaching others to speak up. To take space. To chase what mattered. There were moments I still missed the sound of sneakers on a court. The rhythm of a game. The rush of a win. But those moments faded quickly. Because the joy I felt now was deeper. More lasting. Every diagnosis I made. Every patient I helped. Every person who walked away feeling heard, it mattered. I began writing a blog. About my journey. The intersection of sports and medicine. The pressure of parental dreams. The importance of letting kids choose. It went viral. Messages poured in. From former athletes. From students. From parents. One mother wrote, I almost forced my son into law school. Now I'm letting him explore. I cried reading that. Another man said, I was that father. Thank you for showing me it's not too late to support my daughter's dreams. That's when I realized my story wasn't just mine. It was a mirror. A message. A bridge. I didn't resent my father anymore. He was a product of his time, his hurt, his hope. He did the best he could with the dream he lost. But now, I had a dream of my own. And I was living it. Not just for me. But for every kid who ever felt unheard. For every student told their passion didn't matter. For every young girl who chose a scalpel over a sneaker. And especially for the little me, who once thought she had to choose between love and purpose. Because now, I know you don't have to choose. You can have both. If you fight for it. If you believe in it. If you're willing to walk the long, quiet road that leads back to yourself. Residency hit me like a storm I never saw coming. The textbooks didn't prepare me for the cries in the night. The families pacing in silence. The nurses whispering codes I had just memorized the week before. The weight of a chart with bad news. The ache of not knowing how to soften it. I learned fast. You have to. 12-hour shifts turned into 20. Coffee replaced meals. Sleep became a luxury. But I never once thought of quitting. Because every day, I remembered what it cost me to get here. Every time I stitched a wound, I stitched a piece of myself. Every time I held a patient's hand, I healed a little more inside. There were hard days. Days when patients didn't make it. Days when I felt useless. Days when all I could offer was silence and presence. But even that mattered. Even being there mattered. One night, a teenager came in after a basketball injury. Sprained ankle. His father sat by his side, gripping his hand. They reminded me of us. I asked the boy what he wanted to be when he grew up. He said, an engineer. I smiled and looked at his dad. His father paused. Then said, then we'll build something together. I don't know why, but I teared up right there in the exam room. Because I knew what that meant. I knew what that cost. I finished the checkup and walked out. Sat in the hallway for a moment. And just breathed. Because even now, healing wasn't just for patients. It was for fathers. And daughters. And everything in between. Years passed. I finished residency. Got hired at a public hospital. Started a mentorship group for students with non-traditional paths. We met every other week in a borrowed classroom. Some of them were former athletes. Some were first-gen students. Some had parents who wanted them to be something else. I listened to every story like it was holy. Because it was. Because these kids were sacred. Brave. Wounded. Determined. And I saw myself in every one of them. One night, a girl came up to me after group. She said, "Dr. Brooks, my dad wants me to be a lawyer, but I want to be a surgeon." I said, "Then be a surgeon." She asked, "What if I lose him?" I paused. Then said, "You might lose his approval, for a time. But if he loves you, he'll come back. And you'll still have yourself." She nodded, tears in her eyes. That moment stayed with me. Because I wish someone had told me that when I was her age. Sometimes we wait too long for permission. Sometimes we forget we were always allowed. One summer, I gave a TEDx talk. It was called Letting Our Kids Dream Different. I told my story. Every uncomfortable, complicated part. I saw grown men cry in the front row. Afterward, a man came up to me. Said, "I pushed my son into baseball. He wanted to be a chef. Tonight, I'm calling him and apologizing." I hugged him. Because we were all just trying to do better. One dream at a time. My dad watched the talk online. He called me the next day. Said, "You make me proud every day, but today, you made me proud in front of the whole world." He told me he was coaching a little league team. Not to win. But to guide. To listen. To encourage kids to choose their joy. He told one of them, "You don't have to love this like I do. You just have to love something." I cried. Because that was healing, too. Because even broken fathers can learn to be whole. My relationship with him grew deeper. We talked more honestly. He admitted his regrets. He told me he always saw I was different. But he was scared. Scared that if I didn't follow his path, I'd be lost. He didn't know another way to protect me. I told him, "You protected me by loving me. Even if you didn't always show it the right way." We forgave each other in a way only time allows. Later that year, I published a memoir. It was called The Court I Left Behind. It became a bestseller. Not because it was perfect. But because it was honest. I spoke in schools. Hospitals. Youth programs. One high schooler said, "My dad read your book. He stopped yelling at me for wanting to be an artist." That's when I knew. My story wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a detour. It was a bridge. Connecting parents and kids. Dreams and detours. Loss and healing. One night, I sat at the dinner table with my dad. He was older now. Grayer. Softer. He asked me, "Do you ever wish you stayed with basketball?" I thought about it. Then said, "Sometimes. But only for the good parts. And the best part was always you." He smiled. Said, "I see now that being a father isn't about creating a copy of yourself. It's about protecting their fire. That fire is still burning in me. Brighter than ever. I've started a scholarship fund. For students with big dreams and small voices. For kids who were told no too early. Every year, I sit down with the recipients. I tell them, your dream matters. Even if no one sees it yet. Especially then. And I tell parents, don't kill your child's dream. Water it. Watch it grow. You might be surprised what blooms. Because I was. Because I never thought I'd make it this far. Not after all the pressure. Not after all the silence. But I did. Because I kept one part of me alive. Even when I had to hide it. Even when it made people uncomfortable. Even when it felt like betrayal. It wasn't. It was truth. And truth, when nurtured, grows into something bigger than you. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see the basketball star I never became. I see the doctor I always was. The little girl with the toy stethoscope. The teenager reading medical blogs under the covers. The young woman who risked everything to be herself. I see pride. I see peace. And above all, I see purpose. To every parent out there, love your child enough to let them lead. To every dreamer hiding in plain sight, your voice is enough. Your path is valid. And to my younger self, you didn't fail him. You saved yourself. And in doing so, you saved others, too.